All right. Next one is okay. So when I said
We
an hour
got to
and a
talk
half
about
ago,
this.
yeah. Well, when I said an hour and a half ago, I was like, we don't need to go match by match because I'd rather just talk about some of the highlights of this thing. You're like, no, I did ratings. I did the homework. You have to check my work. I'm like, all right. So, but this is one of those things I want to talk about because I loved every minute of this. I have no complaints. But this is another one where it's kind of like with our movie reviews, where I'm not agitated by the movie. I'm agitated by the people's reaction to the movie.
Yeah.
Um. So first of all, I think Joe Hendry's hilarious,
Okay, hang
and
on. Let me set the stage for this one before we get to it, because you have to understand how we got here.
can I finish my introduction though?
Okay, your introduction spoils who's involved, which is part of the mystery,
What
in theory.
fucking mystery? It happened yesterday.
Okay, fine. Do it how you want to do it.
Who are you surprising? So
Mr. Married to narrative to a strict narrative structure and chronological storytelling 95% of the time, but here we are.
I didn't realize we were going to go through the entire history of each build of each match.
Okay, we
Um.
haven't. Some,
Mhm.
yes, but this one kind of needs it,
You
but go ahead.
started the last match with so there were territories, right? And so anyway, um, so the whole thing with this was Kevin Owens got injured, and so he couldn't do WrestleMania anymore, and they needed somebody for Randy Orton to wrestle. And going back to my comment about there was a period of time where it just felt like people running WWE were having an antagonistic relationship with the fans, and it was like if there was a clear answer, they always took a hard left into anything the fans would have hated with a passion. In fact, they always picked the things they hate the most. And so
We got a
the
little bit of that in this match, believe it or not, but I'll talk about it in a minute.
so Joe Hendry showed up at the Royal Rumble, and he's a TNA. I don't know if he was TNA champion at the time, but he was a
He
TNA
was.
guy. And it's great because like, oh look, the Forbidden Door is swinging. It's not only swinging in AEW, it's swinging in the WWE. This is cool. This makes it fun to be a fan because then I used to say of ECW, the thing that made ECW what it was, at least one of them, was you really never knew what was going to happen on that show. There was always like a really weird surprise. And then during the height of the Attitude Era, what made the Attitude Era so much fun for fans was you really never knew how that show was going to go or what was going to happen. They assigned the low hanging fruit badge of Crash TV to it, but I think Crash TV misses what was really fun about Raw, and that was the unpredictability of it all. So when wrestling became way predictable and overly predictable, and sometimes predictable to the point just to piss the fans off, I lost interest in the product. So it was nice to see Joe Hendry show up at the Royal Rumble, and then here we go to this Randy Orton match, and it's like part of me is like they're going to pick Savio Vega. So that joke. Savio Vega became the WWE's kind of go-to guy to ruin fan expectation. Like if they needed a guy to fill in, and it was like, oh, clearly it's going to be this person, it's got to be that person. It was always Savio Vega. So I'm like, all right, so it's going to end up being Savio Vega here, or Rey Mysterio at the end of the Royal Rumble. Ugh, poor Rey. I've never seen a luchador cry. In any case,
It's because you don't watch enough Lucha Libre.
so the obvious choice here was Joe Hendry or MJF if they could have gotten him. One of the two.
I'm going to counter that slightly, but that's a whole other thing.
So there, or Jericho. That would have been,
No.
I mean, Jericho would have made
Jericho
slightly more sense, but
Jericho would have been terrible
well, he's fat. But my point is, like,
and doesn't put anyone over.
he's currently in AEW. It would have been fun to see him show up and like, oh, look, Forbidden Door, and he's familiar with the WWE style, and everybody knows him. MJF would have been fun because he's never been in the WWE and everyone thinks he should be, yada, yada, yada. Same thing with Jericho. But if you're not going to do somebody from AEW, then who do you do that's from another company that would have been fun? And the answer is, Joe Hendry. But I was like, ooh, are they going to pull that trigger? Are they going to do Savio Vega and piss me off and make me hate this product? Or are they going to give the fans what they want and out walks Joe Hendry? And not since the Io Sky win were me and my kids like that into WrestleMania. We were singing in the living room. We all believed in Joe Hendry. It was like palpable excitement and rapture in my living room watching this thing, which is what you want when you're doing a wrestling product. Tag in.
Okay, so this match goes like what? 3 minutes?
Yes, 3 minutes, 10 seconds.
Okay. I didn't rate this match because I don't have an appropriate rating for the opposite of a dud. You might think the opposite. The opposite of a dud is not a 5-star match. A dud is something that, like, fundamentally misfires and fails to achieve its goal. This was the opposite of that. You were trying to pull something out of your hat. I can understand going with Joe Hendry. I really can. There was a bit of a movement for Karrion Kross to get this spot.
Mm-hmm.
He's a native from Las Vegas. That's where he did all of his beginning wrestling.
He's on the roster.
Yeah. And the only thing they came up for him to do was show up briefly in AJ versus Logan Paul, but
and nag AJ Styles.
More on that in a minute. So there was a bit of an organic push for Kross to get this spot, and I can see the argument for that. That said, if Kross was going to come out, he and Randy would have had to have a real match.
Yeah.
With Joe Hendry, God bless him, you can do 3 minutes.
Yeah. First of all, if you watch that match, look at Joe Hendry's size and musculature compared to Randy Orton. It was like, your kid brother. And Joe Hendry's a reasonably sized guy, but Randy Orton's huge.
Joe Hendry is very strong, but he's got like power lifter build instead of model build.
So here's the thing. And I was thinking about this as you were talking, but I want to make this point for the audience's sake. A couple of years back, there was a guy called Fandango. And Fandango would come out and he would dance. And...
Do you mean Fandango?
Fandango. And here's the thing. It's WWE being autistic at the time. People started fandangoing as a way of protesting the shitty product. They weren't getting what they wanted. They were bored. They could feel the antagonism in the relationship, so they were just kind of doing their own shit. And I believe this was like the night after a particularly bad WrestleMania. So everyone's fandangoing, and then like the bad take from the fandangoing is, Fandango was popular. No, Fandango was not popular. Fandangoing was popular, and it's only popular because the man children in the audience hate your fucking product. That's why.
Look,
okay, if you need a current thing, chicken jockey. Fandangoing was chicken jockey before chicken jockey.
Well, about 4 years after Fandangoing, chanting CM Punk became the protest. It wasn't that CM Punk was the best thing since sliced bread. It was he wasn't here anymore, and the audience echoed a lot of his gripes with the company, so we chant CM Punk as a protest to what's going on in front of us.
So part of like being in a wrestling event, for those who are like watching me because they like me or watching you because they like me, I'm
not even going to dispute it.
but don't really know anything about wrestling is the interactiveness of it all. Like if you go to, if you watch other sports, as other things people do, they throw towels around, they do chants. There's a whole thing that happens in different sports with different teams. With wrestling,
they have cheerleaders. They have cheerleaders for this purpose.
With wrestling, anything that you can sing along to, anything that produces a dance of some kind, a movement among the fans. So the thing of it is Joe Hendry has a way catchy catchphrase. Theme song, say his name and he appears. I believe in Joe Hendry. People, it's fucking memeable. There's a doctor at where I used to work that had a picture of it on his computer. I don't even think he likes wrestling, but everyone knows fucking Joe Hendry now. So it doesn't really matter if he wins or loses or looks good in the match. Who gives a fuck? He was there to produce that moment, and then after that is, who gives a shit? And only the people who it's still real to them or think that like wins and losses and long matches matter, the Meltzer people, the Young Bucks crowd, cared how long that match was or how shitty he looked in that match. It didn't matter. He was there to pop a stadium full of people so that everyone could sing, I believe in Joe Hendry, and then you get in, you get out before anyone's going to miss you, and we're moving on to the next thing. That match was perfect. I mean, it wasn't really a match, but as far as a moment goes, it was as perfect a moment as you're going to have at WrestleMania.
Yeah, and look, the fact that Joe Hendry himself came out earlier today and said, no, that wasn't a squash match.
Yeah, he's not wrong.
The offense went back and forth. It didn't last long, But it went back and forth, and yeah, I lost. You know who
Motherfuckers
else?
are
Hang on.
Motherfuckers are reacting like he's SD Jones in there. There's a reference.
That's a reference, and it's a bit of a meme for the AEW crowd, and I'm not going to go into it.
Really? SD Jones, WrestleMania 3 or whatever it was with King Kong Bundy? That's an AEW thing now?
No, whatever Jones is an AEW meme.
So years and years and years ago, SD Jones got beat within seconds by, I think it was King Kong Bundy at WrestleMania 3.
Yeah.
That's a squash.
Yeah, that, and well, again, so it's a thing that, commentary in AEW does, especially Taz. He'll refer to something as, or a guy who's like in the crowd dressed up as like, oh, that's Refrigerator Jones over there.
Okay.
Kind of thing.
There was a real special delivery Jones once upon a time.
Yeah, no, I'm well aware, but
okay.
But no, he didn't get squashed. In fact, again, that he had to come out and say, no, it wasn't a squash match. Yeah, it didn't go that long. You know who else has had a wrestling match at WrestleMania that didn't go very long and he lost in the end of it? John Cena.
Yeah.
So what? I'm too good for that now? Like, no.
I was gonna say, you want to get a better, version of that. Daniel Bryan and fucking pasty white Irish guy, Sheamus.
Well, that's a worse version for a lot of reasons. But
oh my god, that one that kicked off WrestleMania in Miami. I was there with Melissa at the time, and I remember like seriously thinking about driving back to Tampa.
You probably should have. You would have beat the traffic and not missed anything of value that night. That was a terrible event.
Well, no, that was the Hell in the Cell with Shawn, Taker, and Triple H.
Oh right. I always get that one.
Good.
That was a good match. Okay, yeah, that one you should have left after that match.